Hello and welcome to the Unqualified Podcast with Leon Wilson. That's me. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate every single person who has come by and dropped those likes and subscribed and followed and all those other things. We're on every social media, and today we're live streaming to TikTok, which has been a blessing. And you wouldn't even think about TikTok being a blessing. You wouldn't think about most social media as being a blessing, but there's been folks who have reached out and shown support and some of and helped us to get the word of Christ out there on the platforms that we can and in the open where the name of Jesus belongs. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Today I preached on Peter being imprisoned and having the angel of the Lord appear to him and taking him, setting him free and his chains dropping and all that. And it was incredible to be able to stand in front of my church on July 5th and being a veteran and we have veterans in our church and being able to talk about my service and things like that, and referencing, the freedoms that we have in this nation, 250 years of being a free nation, and that's pretty amazing to be able to say. And I've been to third world countries, and I've seen some of these people and what they're dealing with and things like that, and what we take advantage of and for granted on a daily basis is stuff that they say, man, I wish I had that. And think about it. We get mad when our toilet seat's loose. They don't have toilet seats in a lot of these countries, and they have holes in the floor, little porcelain holes in the floor. Some of them, if they're highfalutin, they might have porcelain, but oftentimes all they have is an outhouse. And if you've gone and used an outhouse, then you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about a porta potty. I'm talking about like a little. It's really like a little mobile miniature yard by 1 yard building, so 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet by about 7 feet, and that's where they use the toilet. And you go in there, winter, spring, summer, whatever, and whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, whatever you got going on, and you do whatever you have to do, and then they move it sometimes seasonally to a different spot, and there's just a hole in the backside where whatever you do in there goes right down the hill. That's what they do. And they come to this country, or they go to a restaurant and they feel fancy if they have, and some of the restaurants have the same kind of holes in the floor kind of toilets too. But, if they go to some place that has an actual toilet, I mean, they're like, whoa, how'd we get so fancy? We can't afford to eat here, or, we can't afford to be here. So, we take that for granted. We take running water for granted. I've seen people have to walk miles or walk a mile to get running water and bring it home so that they can feed their cattle and everything else. And those kids, 16, 17 years old, they're walking 2-3 miles just to work, and they're earning a living for their home. And that's how all this goes. But, you take advantage of that. When you're over there, you're like, man, I want to take advantage of this. I need to work. I need to do whatever. I need to, earn a living and whatever. And you live in a home that's been bombed out on the top. So you live out of the bottom of the home, and you're fixing it up and all this other. And, it's family land, so you don't want to leave it. And here we are in America. We throw a place away in a heartbeat and move on to something else. And, we just, there's so much that we take for granted in this country. And then we have people in our streets who just are just disrespectful, and we have people in our stadiums, who we pay hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year to disrespect us and disrespect what this country stands for. Make no mistakes, y'all. We live in the most blessed nation in the world. To be able to have a platform that we can say whatever we want. There's people get on here and they infuriate other people by just, being disrespectful to our nation, to our veterans, to our, to people here. And you know what? They get applauded for that. But you get somebody on here who just wants to share love and stuff like that, and they run their names right through the mud. And that's the backwards way that America has gotten And that's not stuff that's popular to say. Everything I just said is a very unpopular thing to say, but it's the truth nevertheless. But in another country, that'd get you thrown off of a roof or something, or taken to a ditch somewhere, and they'll off you and just bury you right there. And we've seen it, mass graves that we've uncovered in other countries, and several. Just in Bosnia, when I was over there, there were mass graves being discovered all the time, where Karadzic and Milosevic and all them who had just wholesale murdered a lot of people, and they ended up burying them right there in rows and stuff like that. And it's not popular to talk about either, but it's the truth, and it's what happens in all these third world countries and stuff. We live in a country where we can say whatever we want, almost do whatever we want, and we don't have a whole lot of repercussion, and that's pretty amazing. I mean, you look at England right now. Just a few years ago, in fact, it started real bad, where they were saying if you say anything against certain categories, and I mean you know what categories I'm talking about, they would get you. It would get you locked up, because they would come to your doors and say, well, you offended somebody on social media, you're going to have to come with us. And, here in America, we can offend the fire out of people, and nothing's going to happen. You might get a strike on one of these soft platforms, but you're not going to get like arrested. And that's something to be thankful for, grateful for. We live in the greatest nation that's ever existed on this planet, the most powerful country in the world, and we live in a time where we have leadership who can push a button and then wholesale just destroy any area that comes against us, and that's pretty significant. It's never been the case in the history of this planet. You've never seen a country that is more powerful than the United States of America is right now, and that's just a fact. So I'm grateful to be an American. I'm grateful that I was born in this country. I'm grateful that I live in a country that has goals, and even if they're lofty goals, to be a peaceful nation, peace through strength, and to have a citizenry who, if just given the right platform, can push further than the stars. For the longest time in history, the stars were the limit. Now we are sending contraptions to stars. That's pretty amazing. So all of the fundamentals that make up this country are pretty amazing. It's not a very astute observation. It's just an observation that this country was founded on pure ideals, and the ideology that this country was founded on is that a free people ought to be able to govern themselves, which is pretty significant if you think about it. And don't get me wrong, where there are politics, where there are people, politics will get perverted, which is why that has happened. I mean, the politics of of the world that we live in, if you think about it, it is a pure idea that people should be able to discuss things together and work out issues to come to a common ground so that we can move forward. That's politics. That's all politics is. It's the perversion of those politics that get us into the conditions that we are right now. Let me just explain that for a second. And I won't take much more time on this. I'm just saying the perversion of the politics is why you have such heavy swings one way or the other. When you have a very high swing in things, like for instance, we'll say the right and the left. If it's a very big swing to one end and then a very big swing to the other end, you have to ask yourself the questions: are there outside motivations that are bringing us into these different quorums, if you will? And all of this is a little bit different than what I normally talk about. But if you bear with me just a second, I'll get to the back of this. But anyways, when politics has become so perverted that we have big swings, and that the basis that this country was founded on becomes extreme, and the basis that this country was founded on becomes something that is seen as dangerous, then you have to take that into consideration, and you have to push, if you will, as hard as you possibly can to basically get away from whatever is dividing the nation. And if you think about it, where did the big change come from that our country became so divided? I gave that pause. That was a deliberate pause. The change happened when we started deviating from the founding fathers. And the founding fathers set this country up to be a Christian nation. Wow, how radical. That we could come to a place and exercise our religious liberties to serve God, not beholden to the crown, not beholden to a nation's government that was several thousand miles away, trying to keep us under their thumb and under whatever their mainstream way of belief was, which was failing right and left. Well, then our founding fathers said, "Hey, I'll tell you what. Here's a novel idea. Let's just go ahead and base our entire existence off of this Bible, these 10 Commandments, essentially, and the fact that we can govern ourselves. And that we would say, based off of our God-given rights and our God-given capabilities, what we want to do is just live unmolested, unbothered, and rule ourselves, and then hold each other to a standard that is already set based off of those 10 commandments, and roll from there." Well, then, over the years, the ideology became more conglomerate, and folks who had no business in politics because they were self-driven and all that, started manipulating the system. And they wanted nothing to do, because dishonest people want nothing to do with morality. Dishonest people want nothing to do with principle. Dishonest people especially don't want anything to do with that Bible, because in their minds, they are their own God. That's a little g God, not a capital G God. So they want to have full reign over themselves, say and do whatever they want, because they are the center of the universe. They are the star of the show. They are the book is the subject of their life, and that's how they feel. They're the main character, and that's where we go wrong, because the main character is driven by vanity. That mentality that folks have and that they exhibit is just simply them being vain and living their lives based off of me. And what stimulates me ought to be what I want, and then I should be able to get it. Those are the same people who fuss when mommy and daddy don't give them money, and when they don't get the job and all this other, or they don't get a free meal or something like that. Those are the people. The vanity drives our culture, and we don't like to think about it, but it's the truth. And vanity is why politics got perverted, because folks got into office wanting to line their pockets, and it became, instead of being public servitude, which it's supposed to be service, it became the public serving dudes. And it should have never gotten that way. And that's how you pervert something. Now, let me bring this car a little bit closer to home. The reason why the church isn't so powerful these days is because it went from being an act of servitude to trying to serve a dude. And it can it gets out of line real quick. Here's the deal. This is not popular. If you're a pastor, if you're in service to a church, it shouldn't look ever like the church is serving you. It should always be, and it should be super easy to tell that you are serving the church. And the moment that it goes something different than that, you got to set it straight. Because if it goes off the rails, it's too hard to get back on the rails. So you got to be able to show that congregation love. You got to be able to show that congregation support. You got to be able to hold them accountable, and that's the other thing. But also, and here's the deal, when it becomes about you instead of about them, then what they ask you to do or what they're asking of you becomes too much. Here's how you know your preacher is too high for his own good. He's up on a pedestal and he shouldn't be. If he is unavailable, if your pastor is unavailable, then you got a problem, because you should not have an unavailable pastor. No matter how busy that man is, you ought to be able to get a hold of him. You ought to be able to reach out to him. You're not a pastor if you cannot be there and support your congregation. And that's a stiff pill, but I don't care. You got to swallow it because it's the truth. And you tell me when a disciple had an issue that he couldn't approach Jesus. Even folks who were outside of his circle, if you will, the disciples, people were trying to press toward him and everything, and he would say, "Let them come, let them come." The woman with the issue of blood, she got up, she went, she had to get pushed through the crowd to get to him and touch the hem of his garment, and when she touched that border of his robe, she was healed because his virtue and his blood. And he said, "For I perceive virtue has gone from me." He said, "Who touched me?" And then, he was able to talk to her. But then the little children, he says, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." That means be patient with those kids as they come over here. You're going to have to put up with them coming to me. Everybody should be available to the under shepherd, just like we're available to the shepherd. It's an attainable thing. We should not have to fight to be with those who are there to support us. I'm excited to say that our church is a church that is growing and we're on the move. And I covet your prayers because we are looking at a building. We're going to be having church in this building as kind of like a trial to see if the current congregation, show them who we are, and then also show our congregation what it would be like to have church in this building. And our congregation is incredible. We have just such amazing people that are members of Mercy Church, and I couldn't be more proud to be a pastor of Mercy Church than I am today. There's absolutely, it's just having them kids, having the parents and the other adults there that just want to love on you, man. And that's what we're all about. And our church is just such a great congregation, and we're excited to be growing, and we're excited to be pushing into this new direction. And if y'all would just pray that the Lord be all over this, and that it goes in accordance with how he wants it, I'd be super appreciative. The world is changing. The very fabric of what we have going on in this world is ever changing. And be in prayer for our country. Be in prayer for our dealings overseas and all these other things. Right now, we should not be taking our foot off the pedal. We should be full steam ahead, seeing where we can pray and where we can petition the throne room of God for movement for each other's lives. So, anyways, I love you. God loves you. Enjoy your Independence Day weekend. Don't forget, 250 years is a long time for a free country. And to live in the greatest nation ever is a super big blessing. All of you who live in other countries, I I'm praying for you. I'm praying that your country will say, hey, we want to be free. We want our people to have a voice and all of that so that you can get to experience it too. I love you. God loves you. This has been the Unqualified Podcast with Leon Wilson.